NakeyJakey's a very popular content creator that I don't think needs any introduction. I've been following his content for a while, and in general I find it very entertaining. His editing style and personality stand out among a saturated sea of content creators and critics. So much so that others started imitating his style. Anyway, among his most popular videos is the Outdated series. I know he did not intend to make a series out of that, but it's kind of what happened. Whether or not he will make other videos in the series remains to be seen. Now, watching some of these videos again in retrospective, I found myself rather entertained, and they are definitely things I do agree on. But after a closer look, a lot of his argumentation is rather flawed. Moreover, I find it rather strange the whole framing of these videos. Nakey uses the whole outdated design label as a catch-all for pretty much every issue he has towards a specific game. But as we'll soon see, there is almost nothing really outdated about many of them. Anyway, enough rambling, let's actually start with the first video. Rockstar's game design is outdated. I'm going to comprise the information of the first 8 minutes or so, which consists in the Lego analogy. Basically, you have two sets of Lego. The first one is rather messy, but allows you to do things in your own way. And the other set is where you have to build things in a very specific way. This translated to video games means, on one hand, you have games where you have more freedom to do things in your own way. And Nakey uses here Breath of the Wild, Hitman, Metal Gear Solid series as an example, while on the other hand you have games which are more scripted like Uncharted or Portal and so on.
The bucket represents games that give you a lot of freedom to solve problems in creative ways. Games like Metal Gear Solid 5, Breath of the Wild, Hitman, and not even just because of the Lego metaphor, but Minecraft and Fortnite. Moving over to the Lego set here, this is a completely different kind of experience. The Legos in the set still represent the gameplay mechanics, but you're following a predetermined order on how you're going to experience all the different shit that the game has to offer. So when you finally finish your Lego creation, your creation and my creation are going to look very similar. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing because there's plenty of great Lego set type games. Portal 2, Uncharted 2, Inside, fucking Donkey Kong Country. These games are very linear and have specific beats and gameplay moments that they want you to experience in a certain order and way, and there's nothing wrong with that. All these games are fucking wet dreams.
Now the problem with Red Dead Redemption 2 is the game oftentimes jumps from these two, from the open world which offers more freedom to the linear quests which are too scripted. So I kinda have to agree here, it's rather frustrating indeed how limited freedom and heavily scripted many of these missions are. I'm pretty sure we all had moments when even the slightest deviation led to mission failed. This is definitely an area where Rockstar games have struggled, although to be honest they are not really the only ones. One game that comes to mind is Witcher 3. Released just 3 years prior, and despite being considered an RPG, many people praise the mission design for some odd reason. And while you won't see mission fail that often for leaving the area, most of them were extremely linear too, and I barely seen anyone bothered by that. Anyway, here is where my disagreements start to appear. Early on he complained how having one foot into the open world design and the other into the roller coaster, the game doesn't achieve its full potential. But then he says some weird stuff like, in order to get the player to experience exactly what you want in an open world game, first you have to ride to the mission mark? What?
But by having one foot in open world design and one foot in roller coaster design, neither design ever achieves its full potential and is never as interesting or as deep or as consistent as its contemporaries. Because in order to get the player to experience exactly what you want in an open world game, first you gotta make them ride to the mission mark, and then you gotta ride to where the mission actually takes place, and then you gotta wait for something to inevitably go wrong, and then shoot guys in the face, and then do that over and over and over and over. Red Rover, send good missions on over.
Between Red Dead 2 and Uncharted 2, it's almost 10 years gap difference, so I have no idea what contemporary means to Nakey. It's like saying God of War and Fallout 3 or New Vegas are contemporaries. Also, that's not how you experience the open world. You experience it by exploring it and interacting with various systems and activities. What he describes here is the standard missions, which some tend to get a little repetitive, yes, although there are plenty which differ. However, just like every single open world game ever made, which has side missions or quests, you have to run or ride towards that place and follow through what that particular mission has to offer. I really don't understand what seems to be the problem here. Also, since he made a comparison with Uncharted, in that game when you don't ride a roller coaster, you watch cutscenes or spend time walking around while listening to some character talking. This is also the case with Red Dead 2 missions. Actually, many of them in Uncharted share similar beats to the ones in Red Dead 2, aside of course from the platforming sections.
And it's just sad because they have this magnum dong of a map that's so gorgeous and huge with crazy attention to detail, with signs that give you directions and other landmarks to tell where you're going. And before the game came out, I remember seeing some rumor float around that if you play the game without the radar on, NPCs will actually give you directions for missions, and then you have to pay more attention to the game world itself instead of this little fucking circle in the corner. And when I heard that shit, I got super excited because it meant that I could turn off the radar and just use the compass and the fucking physical map that comes with the game. Because while Rockstar has always included these sweet ass maps with their games, I've only ever had to bust one out to complete a mission once, and it was fucking amazing.
This video, it's a bit incoherent and all over the place. So he jumps from having to write to the mission marker, which as I previously said is something you do in almost every open world game, to this is sad apparently because look how beautiful and detailed this open world is, while also how he built expectations based on unconfirmed rumors.
In Grand Theft Auto 4, there were these awesome side missions where you would receive a text with a description of a car you're supposed to steal, along with its address. No icon on the map, no waypoint on the radar, just a text. I got tagged! And because the in-game map doesn't show the street names, I had to bust out the actual physical map that came with the game and study the names of the roads to find the exact location of the car. And then when I went to that location in the game, bada boom, bada bing, Michael Scott's Sebring, there's the car. And that felt amazing.
So there was only a text description, no mission marker, and the in-game map had no street names, nothing. But then Nakey pulled the map out of his ass and bada boom, he found a place. I hope you all see this is extremely flawed game design, which guarantees a direct path to frustration. I really don't care if there was a physical map, which most people don't have anyway. If I have to exit the game or Google what shit is because instructions were missing or incomplete, that will suck.
And that felt amazing. I felt like an actual badass instead of a toddler that needed to be told what to do every 5 seconds. So you could surmise that while I was playing Red Dead 2, I tried to play the game without having the radar turned on and just the compass. And while roaming the open world, it's fucking great. If I meet a stranger and he tells me that I should go rob a yellow house in the woods north of roads, I'm gonna use that information along with my compass and my physical map to figure out where to go. And not having a waypoint always telling you exactly where to go makes even the simple process of adventuring around and finding stuff super satisfying. You feel like this badass cowboy explorer with a map and fucking mutton chops. But once you actually start any of the missions, it is impossible to do shit without having the radar on.
Yes, Red Dead 2, just like many open world games, relies on quest markers in order to tell the player where he has to go next. I know some people might prefer other ways, like a brief description for example, or a physical map in this case, but honestly I always thought this is one of those things that sound better on paper than reality. More often than not, in games where information was delivered in that way, or even lacks a journal to keep track of it in the first place, was either incomplete or misleading, which led to plenty of time wasted trying to find the damn place, or I simply gave up and started googling stuff. I never saw it as a matter of feeling like a badass instead of a baby. Moreover, knowing the exact location where you have to go next keeps up the pacing of that particular storyline, without wasting time meandering and guessing where I have to go next. From a designer's perspective, it's also kind of understandable why would they rely on quest markers, considering it's an open world where things can get messy and confusing. Moreover, missions at the end of the day are stories with a certain pacing and multiple sets of events that only trigger when the player reaches a certain location, so it's good to know where that is. If I want to roam around the open world driven by my own curiosity, fine, I don't need a compass. But during missions, having the same approach, that can be very annoying, and it gets old rather quickly. Look no further than Elden Ring's side quests, and how many people actually manage to follow those without a guide. Indeed, it's very badass having to constantly pause the game, Google where shit is, instead of putting that directly into the game. Also, implementing a system where NPCs give the player directions for quests and guidance for certain locations on such a massive open world scale can be very resource and time consuming. It's not impossible of course, and I can see that working at least for certain missions. This is something more linear games don't have such an issue, since the linearity and boundaries set by the level design point the player in a specific direction without needing quest markers that much. That being said, the over-reliance on quest markers can be sometimes too much, and maybe a more loose and alternate way of delivering information developers should sometimes consider, depending on context. For example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Odyssey had a few quests which had no markers and required checking the map first and some extra steps before finding the objective. Although the funny thing is, I haven't seen many people praising that, despite the fact apparently, isn't this what some people wanted? Now I'm going to skip a bit forward to chapter 2, since I think I said everything I wanted to say on this part and Nakey's arguments tend to get a little repetitive. Anyway, let's jump to the camp system, which seems to be his first complaint about the open world stuff.
The last one I'm referring to is the camp system, which in theory was supposed to be a big incentive and driving cause for doing a lot of the activities in the game. Hunting, fishing, robbing, bounty hunting, gambling, anything that provides you with a good or money that you can either keep for yourself or donate to the camp to help take care of your fellow cowpokes, which is a super cool concept, right? It doesn't fucking matter at all. You can be the biggest degenerate piece of shit with the lowest honor and be a complete C-word to everyone in the camp. That's cunt. C-word is cunt. And never donate a dickel to the services or the camp or the food or anything, and the story just keeps on chugging like nothing ever happened. Like, what the fuck?
Yes, the camp system is kind of there and it's extremely underdeveloped, and there was lots of missing potential to expand the game and encourage the player to engage more with various activities. However, the solution Nakey proposes here is pretty bad. It kind of reminds me of some of the latest Ubisoft games, especially Origins and Odyssey, where you have to be a certain level in order to progress to the next point in the story, and to get there required a lot of grinding.
This not only lessens the meaning of so much of your open world interaction, but it could have easily been handled so much better. The game could have made it where you could only continue with the story if you've actually taken care of the camp and dumped a significant amount of money into it. Because not only does that bring the story and the open world closer together, now you actually have a strong incentive to rob a train or do some bounties or sell some animals.
Nope, this doesn't bring the story and the open world closer together. What it does, it pauses the story in order to make room for some open world side activities. Also, if you have to engage with these activities in order to progress the story, that is no longer an incentive. You are pretty much forced to do that so you can move on with the story. A better way to do this is to have these activities like robbing the train or a bank linked to the camp. This could appear occasionally, and as a reward you could get unique stuff like new weapons. Once you get enough money, you can upgrade and expand the camp, which offers new side activities, side missions, and even new NPCs. And this way you can incentivize the player to engage more with these activities without pausing the story.
And it could make for some really great risk versus reward choices in the honor system as well, where now it's like, oh shit, I can make money faster if I rob a train, and then I could continue the story sooner, but then everyone's gonna hate me and I'm gonna be a bad guy. That's an interesting choice.
I don't disagree with the idea of having other members reacting differently, depending on your honor level. But I really don't like the whole let's put the story on hold until you make more money. What if you don't want to be a bad guy and rob trains but still want to move on with the story? You basically force the player to go fishing or hunt some animals just to make more money. Another problem with his solution is the fact it's not sustainable in the long term. I mean, you do want the player to engage with these activities throughout the whole game, not just when the story is on hold.
How the game is right now, there's not really any incentive to be bad. It's just, I feel like being a bad guy, so I'm gonna do it. Couple this with the fact that the main missions give you way too much money, way too fast, which I get that that's a weird complaint, but seriously.
That I agree, you do get eventually too much money for missions. However, you can spend them on guns, clothes, camp upgrades, and also paying bounties, but still, in the late game you'll end up with plenty of cash and not much to spend it on. Okay, now let's talk about the wanted system.
Speaking of making getaways, I think we can all agree that the wanted system in the game is pretty hit or miss. The game has a witness system, which is actually pretty cool. In theory. Basically, if someone witnesses you committing a crime, they're gonna try and run and tell a lawman about it. And you have the option to try and stop them before they do that, which is super cool. You can kill them, you can tie them up, you can threaten them, you can shoot your gun in the air to try and scare them and accidentally shoot a bird out of the sky in the process. And that's all cool as shit because the game is giving you some dynamic choices. And what's also cool is that the game has a whole mask in disguise system that it barely explains at all. But lucky for you, I have wasted hours of my life trying to get to the bottom of how this shit works, and I can finally put an end to all the Reddit threads and YouTube videos that keep making shit up.
Oh well, if by putting an end to Reddit posts and YouTube videos that keeps making shit up, he means making more shit up, in that case he's got a point.
Essentially, if you don't currently have a bounty, NPCs won't recognize you if you have a mask on. You don't need a new outfit from what you've already been wearing, you don't need a new fucking horse or new guns, you just need a mask. But even with a mask on, cops will always immediately recognize you as Arthur Morgan if they see you committing a crime. Which this isn't super realistic, but I actually don't have that much beef with this rule. So if you're wearing a mask and you shoot a man in the middle of Valentine in front of several witnesses and you bail the area before any cops come, you won't get a bounty. And after your wanted level goes away, you can go back to the same town wearing the same outfit and the same mask mask and do the same shit again, and you still won't get a bounty because at this point, NPCs have what I refer to as dumb brain. But
So until this point, he's correct. You can commit a crime with a mask on and NPCs won't recognize you. And you won't get a bounty even if you return to the same place minutes later, wearing the exact same outfit. It's a bit jarring to see people having such a goldfish memory. I would have preferred the town to enter in a high alert state for a day or two after committing the crime. Anyway, at least he's got this part right.
But if you did get caught the first time and you do have a bounty now, the bounty is what starts changing things. So now, if you go back and you do the same shit with the same outfit and the same mask and you have a bounty this time, not only will cops arrest you on sight, but NPCs are now baby geniuses and will immediately recognize you and you'll get a higher bounty even if you bail the area before the cops come. But
that is really not true. If you have a bounty and commit another crime, NPCs won't become baby geniuses and recognize you instantly. First, they have to report the crime, then after the police shows up, you will get the bounty. However, if you escape before police shows up, no bounty will be placed on your head. Now, it is totally possible that cops might be already around after committing a crime, which can give you the impression that NPCs could recognize you instantly.
But if you had changed your outfit before going back into the town where you have a bounty, NPCs won't immediately recognize you and patrolling cops won't try to arrest you on sight unless you hang around them for too long. Okay, did you get all that?
Wrong again. This is quite a common misconception people have, or at least had. But changing clothing doesn't have any impact. Cops will still recognize you regardless. As proof, even in his short clip Nakey decided to show. Cops usually won't arrest you on sight, no matter if you wear the same outfit or not. Usually it takes them a few seconds for them to act.
Jesus Christ, I need to take up knitting or something instead of this shit. It's not a perfect system, but I'm the type of person where if I know the rules and the rules are consistent, then I'm a happy boy. But the rules aren't fucking consistent.
So on this aspect, rules are actually rather consistent and pretty simple. Wear a mask and NPCs won't recognize you, only cops. So you better run before they show up. Commit a crime without a mask, NPCs will recognize you. And you will get a bounty if the crime gets reported. The more crimes you commit in a certain town, more cops will patrol the area, which increases the chances of being detected, no matter what outfit you wear.
A. Robbing a train. You can strategically choose to rob a train when it's out in the middle of dipshit nowhere with an outfit and a mask that no one has ever seen. And somehow a cop 3 miles away will not only know that a train is being robbed, but that it's specifically Arthur Morgan that's doing it. Somebody better give that cop a raise because he is a goddamn expert.
This is very misleading. Here's the whole picture, Nakey doesn't fully show it. After you initiate the train robbery, you have some time before cops get alerted. I think this depends how close or far in the middle of nowhere is the train from the nearest station, but usually it takes between 40 seconds to 1 minute for the cops to get alerted. So after the crime gets reported, it takes a little while as well for them to show up, around 15 to 20 seconds from my estimation. This whole time they won't know instantly it was Arthur who committed the crime, as Nakey insinuates here. So after the crime gets reported, you better bail the area as soon as possible, if you don't want a bounty. This is actually consistent with the previously established rules. The only exception to the rule is how the cops get alerted. Usually it takes at least one witness to report the crime, but in this case things are more tricky. I mean, in order to get cops alerted, someone has to jump off the train somehow and run to the nearest station. It can be a logistical nightmare to implement such a system, so I kind of understand why they decided to do it this way. I'm not denying this system doesn't have its flaws, and I do believe could have worked better.
And this is the same type of bullshit that's been an issue with cops in the GTA games since forever, where you'll kill a man out in the middle of nowhere and somehow every cop in the tri-state area just had a That's So Raven type vision and somehow knows about it now.
How on earth is this the same system as the one in GTA? What Nakey does here is to compare the train robbery where indeed cops spawn with the random crimes you commit in the middle of nowhere in GTA. But this is not a one-to-one comparison. In Red Dead 2, if you commit a crime in the middle of nowhere, no cops will spawn unless there is a witness to report the crime. However, if you kill the witness before that, no cops will show up. You can actually go on a murder spree and kill almost every NPC you see on the road, and as long as there is no witness to report the crimes, no cops will spawn.
Red Dead 2 could have done something new and actually had like dedicated and scheduled routes that the police would follow that you could study and like plan your robberies around, instead of just doing the same bullshit of just spawning cops in front of you whenever the game wants.
I'm not really sure how studying the cops patrol would work in this case, considering the player could easily avoid them by simply fast traveling from one station to another, or could simply stop the train before encountering the cops. Now designing such an activity like train robbery, which would involve challenge, risk and reward, can be rather tricky. I sort of understand why it was designed in this way, which is mainly to avoid such an activity to be exploited, considering the fact robbing a train is pretty easy. You can basically just hop on one, rob and shoot everyone and then loot them without any risk of being caught, since there's no one left to run away and alert the cops. One thing that maybe could have partially improved this is a timer that gradually fills up after the crime gets reported, so you have time to plan your escape and run, and get less surprised when cops spawn out of nowhere.
Exhibit B, robbing stores. The open world of Red Dead 2 is at its worst when your older brother Rockstar still keeps barging into the room to control everything. What I mean by this is that it is impossible to commit the perfect robbery. You can plan your escape route and go in the back door without anyone seeing you and rob the store without firing a single bullet and making any noise, and yet somehow every single time there's a witness. Whether they walk in right on cue like it's a fucking sitcom or somehow spot you from the outside, even in a shop with no windows, I've never seen it not happen.
Okay, so there are many things wrong with what he says here. Therefore, let's break it piece by piece. If there are people around, outside, there will mostly be a witness. Ideally, you may want to wait a bit for the perfect opportunity, so the area is cleared out and no one will see you. However, if there are witnesses, usually it takes some time to report the crime, time in which is more than enough to take the money and run. Also, keep in mind, if you take the money and don't kill the guy behind the store, he will become a witness and report the crime. Also, there were some cases when cops roamed around the store, and in those cases you better be careful, because they will get suspicious and place a bounty on your head rather quickly.
Now, every single time there's a witness. Whether they walk in right on cue like it's a fucking sitcom or somehow spot you from the outside, even in a shop with no windows, I've never seen it not happen.
Even in a shop with no windows.
You know, shit like this sometimes makes me question Nakey's intentions here. This room clearly has windows. I really don't know why would he like that.
Also, because the game doesn't even let you access your weapon wheel while in the store, you can't even attempt a stealth kill before trying to rob the register or even use your preferred weapon to rob the store. Because that makes total sense and definitely doesn't make me want to spit on the floor.
Everything he said here you cannot do, you can actually, but not in the way he expected. After you enter a store, you can only aim with the last weapon you equipped, so make sure before you enter you have the one you prefer. After you initiate the robbery, you can actually access the weapon wheel and commit stealth kill using the knife or your empty fist. This will make a less sound, which will give you more time before someone sees you from outside. If there's no one around at that moment, there will be no witness and you don't have to worry. Now, I would agree the witness system can be a bit too sensitive, but it's far from what he describes it here. It's actually pretty easy to commit a robbery and not be caught. And most importantly, you can actually commit a perfect robbery.
Register now. I ain't gonna let this happen. Want more?
The next part of his video, I will summarize it here, since it's pretty long and I don't want to stretch this unnecessarily. So he tried to run the gunsmith in Saint Denis, but Rockstar, as usual, instead of allowing Nakey to do it in his own way, he had to commit the robbery according to Rockstar's plan. He goes into more details how he tried to approach the mission, but ultimately it failed. The robbery at the gunsmith in Saint Denis works as a scripted mission you pick from the beggar, rather than the usual robberies you commit at other stores. It's indeed rather unfortunate how scripted it is. So yeah, Nakey is right here, and Rockstar definitely should take into account players' freedom more during these types of missions.
One of the biggest hype words surrounding Red Dead 2 is realism, with you having to feed Arthur and bathe Arthur and manually loot every single individual item and wear the right clothes in the right weather and feed your horse a steady diet of oat cakes. And all of that stuff is in the game, which is great, but a lot of it is also extremely shallow. You don't actually have to eat or sleep on a regular, realistic basis. They're both just different video gamey ways to refill your cores. Yes, you can make a campfire to rest in the wilderness, but the game does it all for you.
Red Dead 2 has a lot of realism indeed, but just like every single game which is focused on that to an extent, realism is extremely arbitrary and selective. It's very easy to go down the realism rabbit hole and find almost infinite ways in which a certain game could be more realistic. Moreover, too much realism can sometimes get in the way of actually playing and enjoying the actual game. One of the best examples I can think of is Kingdom Come Deliverance. A game that is oftentimes praised for that, despite the fact many parts of it are extremely unrealistic. You need to sleep on a regular basis, and yet you can't set up a camp while exploring and take a nap. You must eat, but then nobody minds when you do that from other spot, but surely they will get annoyed if you lay down in their bed. Also, you need to remain clean and wash regularly your clothes, and not to mention also repair your armor. I don't mind some of the busy work to an extent, but after a while this can feel like a chore, which can get in the way of actually enjoying the game, exploring and doing all sorts of side missions. The reason I mentioned all this is because Red Dead 2 is very similar. There is a lot of realism which enhances the overall experience, and makes the world more grounded and believable. But at the same time, there are plenty of things that make the game really annoying to play, such as looting bodies or picking up items. Now, Nakey mentioned the fact you don't have to sleep or eat on a regular basis, which is fine actually. More time playing the game and less time wasted in menus and loading screens. However, this is not as shallow as Nakey make it out to be, simply because you're not forced to babysit Arthur. For example, depending on how much he eats, he will get visibly skinnier or fatter, which plays a role to an extent on how much damage the player receives, and how fast he moves. Also, there is an incentive to it, since the hardcore serves as a secondary heart after the main bar gets depleted, and the only way to fill it up is through eating. Now, I know ultimately the survival elements are very subjective. While some might prefer a heavy emphasis on tasks like sleeping or eating, or changing your clothes if you get wet, or simply using the hat if it rains, others might consider some of them just more busy work and annoying interruptions. I think the best of both worlds is to have multiple difficulty options that ultimately allows you to customize your own personal experience. But hey, modding exists if you are into that, so...
Filling cores. Yes, you can make a campfire to rest in the wilderness, but the game does it all for you. It's not something interesting like in Breath of the Wild, where you actually get to interact with different aspects of the open world. Like, okay, I chopped down a tree and I got some wood, but shit, it's raining, so I have to find a place protected by rain, and then I put my wood down, but oh shit, how am I gonna start a fire? Well, I mined these rocks earlier and they gave me some flint, so I'm gonna put it next to the fire and hit it with a metal blade, and oh shit, now I have this cozy little fire. Not only does Red Dead do all of this automatically, which is super realistic, but it also fucking teleports you to the nearest clearing and automatically gives you a fire and a fucking tent, and the rain doesn't make any difference. You can have a fire in the rain. You don't have to look for any shelter or like keep an eye out on the world or anything. It's a joke.
There is a lot to unpack here. First of all, no, you cannot place your tent anywhere you want. I can sort of understand some people might be annoyed by this, especially when you find a cool place with a gorgeous view, and maybe you want to set up a camp there. Instead, you get teleported somewhere nearby. However, I might suspect why they decided to do it this way. First of all, the open world of Red Dead Redemption 2, unlike Breath of the Wild, it's way more alive and filled with stuff, with plenty of wildlife and people traveling all around. Many of these things could interfere and get in the way of the player setting up a camp anywhere. Also, there are some random encounters that are placed at your camp. I guess maybe it was easier to link those events to the camp in this way. I can only speculate, so I can't really know for sure why they decided to not let the player camp anywhere. Okay, now let's go to the comparison with Breath of the Wild Nakey made. You cannot cut trees in Red Dead 2 like in Breath of the Wild, that is true. And here are a few things I believe why. First, this maybe has to do with development limits and constraints. While Rockstar might be the biggest AAA dev, there are still limits to what they can do. For example, being a lumberjack in this game is not as simple as in Breath of the Wild to achieve. Let's say you want to cut off a tree. Well, the question is, which one? Unlike Breath of the Wild, which has only a handful of tree models copy-pasted across the entire map, Red Dead 2 has dozens and dozens of models, from the thin small ones to thick and tall of all shapes. Then you also must consider the action itself. Breath of the Wild being somewhat cartoonish and stylized game, performing these actions is rather simple to execute. Chop chop a few times, the tree log falls to the ground, you hit it a few more times, and puff, you have the perfect wood to pick up. In Red Dead 2, since has an emphasis on realism, performing the same actions can be more laborious and difficult to develop. In the best case scenario I can think of, maybe you can watch a cutscene where Arthur chops off the tree, then maybe another cutscene where he chops the tree log into small pieces, and then you can pick those up. Another thing developers maybe had to consider is, well, should you be able to cut all trees? Leaving aside all the model variants, you have trees inside towns, or next to camps, which could have complicated things even more. Look, I'm not saying chopping off trees would have been impossible, but not as easy as Nakey make it out to be by making these simplistic and narrow comparisons. At the end of the day, when you develop a game, you have to pick your battles and set your priorities. For Rockstar, hunting animals was far more interesting as a gameplay activity than being a lumberjack, and honestly I'm really glad they made that choice. Moving on to the dialogue system and greeting strangers.
A big feature of the game that I mentioned earlier is how you can use L2 to lock on to every NPC in the game, with some exceptions, and greet or antagonize them. And while this is a cool addition, it ends up being super contextual most of the time and doesn't lead to a whole lot of interesting choices. Because most of the time it boils down to either saying hi or fight me. And if you strip away the diffuse option after pissing a dude off, it's essentially the same two options that you have in the first game. A lot of my problems with the dialogue system are basically the same ones that made Fallout 4's dialogue suck so much ass compared to New Vegas. Instead of it feeling like a dynamic exchange where you could do cool shit and have some creative moments that made you feel smart, it essentially boils down to generic good guy option, generic bad guy option. And Red Dead 2 is even more stripped down than Fallout 4 was.
Some of the complaints I do think are valid. I do wish honestly Rockstar introduced a dialogue system for certain scenarios at least. However, I do not expect to be the case with every single NPC, considering there are hundreds and hundreds in this game. Now Nakey made the following video recently where he sort of took back, or better say gave more credit, to the dialogue system he critiqued years ago.
Funny. Honestly, I was pretty off base with my comparison to New Vegas or other RPGs with the greet antagonize system because that fully undersold just how entertaining and immersive it can be.
Howdy.
Howdy.
That's a fine horse you got there.
Appreciate it.
How long you been married?
Now you best shut your big bazoo.
So yeah, the comparisons he made with New Vegas are pretty dumb in my opinion, but there is more to this.
And okay, I get why right now you might be thinking, Jakey, why the fuck are you even comparing Red Dead 2 to New Vegas? They're totally different types of games. But they're really not. They're both open world, they both have some survival stuff, they both want you to interact with NPCs with different dialogue choices, they both try to put you in interesting gameplay situations, but the difference between a game like New Vegas and Red Dead 2 is that New Vegas gives you a variety of options and tools so that you can make moments happen. But in Red Dead 2, special moments only happen to you.
By having such a simplistic and general view, you can arrive at the conclusion plenty of games are basically the same. If we follow his logic, you know what game is very much the same, or at least very similar to these games? Stardew Valley.
They're both open world, they both have some survival stuff, they both want you to interact with NPCs with different dialogue choices, they both try to put you in interesting gameplay situations.
Fallout New Vegas ultimately it's an RPG with a lot of emphasis on choices and roleplay. Red Dead 2 on the other hand is a game that has a protagonist, focused more on telling an emotional story without much of the player's interference. It's true they are both open world games, but the way they approach it's rather different. And to be honest, while Fallout New Vegas might be a great RPG, as an open world exploration it's not that good.
There's definitely some exceptions to what I mean, but the random encounters and open world activities in Red Dead 2 versus the quests and options for role-playing in New Vegas are the difference between, once again, a Lego bucket and a bunch of haunted houses. I'm aware that these metaphors are all over the place. What I mean is that New Vegas gives you the pieces to play out scenarios in a bunch of different ways, e.g. Lego bucket, versus Red Dead 2 that has some really cool-ass random encounters and memorable moments that quickly lose all of their appeal the second time around, e.g. haunted houses. And if you just really like going through haunted houses, I totally get how you think Red Dead 2 is the overall better game. And to counterpoint myself, there are also some great exceptions to this in Red Dead 2. Like the time I came across this kooky old guy looking for gold, so I waited around for a while until he actually found some gold, and then I robbed him for his gold, which Arthur appropriately said some shit like, that's my gold now, or something. I don't know, but it was amazing. And those exceptions in Red Dead 2 are the best part of the whole friggin' game. They're the moments that you want to share with your friends and talk about. But after the honeymoon period with the game ends, and the encounters become predictable and start repeating themselves throughout the world, they suddenly lose all of their appeal the second time around. Haunted house style.
These comparisons are pretty bad. On one hand, you have random encounters, where things happen to the player, aka the haunted house metaphor, versus quests in Fallout New Vegas, where you have the tools and pieces to play scenarios in different ways. Well, there are a few problems with these comparisons, one of them being these things serve completely different purposes. Random encounters in Red Dead 2, just like other games for that matter, exist with the purpose of making the world more eventful and sort of unpredictable, like anything could happen while exploring. These random encounters also engage the player in various small story scenarios, which are mostly self-contained. Ultimately, the whole purpose of this is to enhance the exploration. For example, when you travel back and forth between locations, taking the same road, well, you can encounter almost each time something else, which makes the world feel more dynamic and eventful. Now, I do agree, some of these random encounters can repeat sometimes, and lose some of that magic the second time around. But nowhere as often this happens as Nakey make it out to be here. I mean, there are over 200 random encounters, so the game is very generous. Side quests on the other hand have a longer format. They don't randomly pop out on the road, with some exceptions, and yes, sometimes they may involve more complex choices. Feel like it's a case of apples and oranges here. I mean, at the end of the day you can have them both. Moreover, the whole binary, things that happen to you versus things that you make happen, is just wrong. By choosing to interact with these random encounters, you also make things happen as well.
And because your options are so limited and you can only interact with the game world and make special moments when Rockstar contextually presents them to you. Telling my friend about the time I sucked venom out of a dude's leg to save his life and then later ran into him outside of the gunsmith in Valentine and he bought me a gun because of my good deed, that feels a whole lot less special in an open world game when my friend tells me that he had the exact same experience.
Okay, so there was this random encounter where at the end he made a choice, and based on that choice there was an outcome. But this was less special because his friend made the same choice and had the same outcome. Again, what? Isn't this the case with almost, if not all, the games where you can make choices and you have consequences? In Fallout New Vegas, if I or a friend of mine make the exact same choice, we'll receive the same outcome based on that choice. So what exactly seems to be the problem here? Am I missing something?
Again, it's all about Legos. It just turns out that so much of the open world stuff in Red Dead 2 is Lego sets that are going to look very similar to your friends versus creations from the magical Lego bucket.
Now he says, so much of the open world stuff in Red Dead 2 are Lego sets, looking very similar to your friends. But that's just nonsense. Two people playing Red Dead 2 can have completely different experiences in the open world depending on their intention and what choices they make. I mean, you do have the freedom to do things in your own way in the open world and experiment. Be a complete psychopath if you want to, with the highest bounty. Sneak into people's houses and rob them, or bully people, or just be a saint if you want and help them. You also have some freedom on how you approach these random encounters as well. Actually, there is way more freedom than the typical scripted missions. You can be nice and help people you met on the road, or do nothing and watch them die or getting shot. Or you can make things happen by doing things in your own way. You can make plenty of organic choices, and the world would actually react to them in various ways. So the Lego bucket he keeps talking about is right there.
Don't leave us, Pop.
A bad thing. Such thing as forgiveness.
Sweet girl, she didn't do nothing to you. Let me out of these, you'll answer for that. You'll answer.
So yeah, we finally reached the end of this video. Aside from a few agreements here and there, I ended up disagreeing more than I initially expected. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, maybe consider liking and subscribing, and let me know if you would be interested in seeing a response to his other two videos, which are just as bad or even worse in some cases. So yeah, that's it, bye bye, see you next time.